Today, let's go through how to train for the pike press to handstand. Now, the pike press to handstand is very similar to the other versions of the press handstand, but the idea is you just keep the legs dead straight. Now, one of the things we really need to make sure that we have is a deep, warmed up forward fold. Now, you can get away with not being amazingly flexible with this one and still pike press. It just means that you're going to be a bit more planchy, so your back and shoulders are really going to have to go forwards in the opposite direction. But having the forward fold deeper is definitely going to help and make it much easier to lift the feet off the bottom like that. Now, obviously, we have all the standard hamstring exercises that you can do, flexibility work to make yourself deeper in that position. But two of my favorites are the elevated version, double leg. So just having the wood slant board or something you can put up at an angle, and then you stick your feet on there. The higher the angle, the more it's going to wind up the calf and the hamstring together. And then we just lock the knees backwards and then take the elbows towards the floor. And once you get used to it, you can do things like bounces and things, but obviously be super careful with this one because it is winding everything up from the calf, the hamstring, and lengthening the spine as well. Another awesome one for the hamstrings is going in nice and close to the wall with bent knees. And then you go in from the side, get yourself down as low as you can, and then straighten the legs. Once you're here, you can wiggle down deeper and then hold that position. That's super intense through the calves, through the hamstrings, and it's really about trying to take the head down towards the floor so you get two long lines, the calves, the hamstrings to the hips, and then from the hips down to the head or to the elbows. Now, these pike press exercises and drills can be done obviously freestanding, but they can also be done using the wall. Most people, when they get to the level of learning the pike press, they can already hold a freestanding handstand. But in terms of lots and lots of repetitions of drills, just to get consistency in your training, you might need to use the wall as a balance assist. So if you're using a drill, for example, where you have to kick up and then maybe do an eccentric down, if it takes you 2 or 3 attempts to kick up to the handstand, then having the wall there, just in case, to create a little bit more consistency of catch, to allow you to do more repetitions is going to be beneficial. And then for some of these drills, you're going to need to actually lean on the wall a little bit more so you get the correct time under tension. But let's look at that eccentric press in a little bit more detail. It's a great place to start for the pike press because it can highlight where our gaps are. So if we just start in our handstand position, so our straight handstand, and then all we're going to do is have dead straight legs, squeeze them together, and just lower as slow as possible. Now, when I'm doing this, if I don't take my shoulders or hips backwards, if I just do that, I'm going to hit the floor really fast because my lever arm goes really far that way, and there'll just be a point where there's too much in that direction in terms of weight or energy and not enough in that direction to counterbalance it. So what we should be seeing when we come down is something goes this way to counterbalance the legs. If not, we're going to carry on down like that. So ideally, kick up to a freestanding handstand, video yourself from the side, just move down as slow as possible and see what happens. Now, if you're lucky enough to be already at the level where you're in that straight position and can lower with really good control all the way down until your tippy toes touch very lightly, then you can near enough disregard the next drill because you already got enough time under tension, and that's the best one that's going to carry over to the handstand. But if you're like most people, when we try that, we're going to fall or drop through part of the movement. We need to use the wall version to slow it down more and get time under tension. So the easiest wall version is going to be going up into this position. So notice I've externally rotated my hands, my fingers are out to the side. I need to make sure that I can take my shoulders and my back to the wall and be able to come back off again. Now, if you can't do that, we need to train this. One way of being able to train it is take the head to the wall first, which decreases the range of motion, but I'm still trying to move the shoulders and the torso at the same time as one piece. I'm not doing this or this. I'm trying to move as one, so everything touches the wall at the same time, everything comes back off again. Once I have a strong position leaning into the wall, I'm just going to do exactly the same thing as the eccentric we've done freestanding and see how slowly I can go down. Now, as I go down for this movement, my legs are going to get roughly parallel. I need to really focus on my butt, low back, pushing hard into the wall. As I go lower, it's going to go mid back, then eventually upper back. So I kick up to the wall, take everything to the wall, and then I come down slowly. So once I get to around this point, I'm pushing hard into the wall with my butt. Low back, mid back, now upper back, tiptoes touch the floor, hold 1, 2, 3, and then come back out again. Now, the rate that your legs go down and the control you have to push in is going to be determined by your flexibility, control, and also the distance your hands are away from the wall. If I have my hands further away from the wall, it's going to allow me to take a lot more weight that way, but at the risk that I collapse in the middle here and I don't have a strong position. So I would start actually closer to the wall to start with, just test what your body can handle there. And then just slowly fine tune the position until you find that sweet spot where you've got the most control through that range of motion. Now you still might drop a little bit and that's fine. Now if that feels completely impossible to get any control on the way down, you probably need to test your tuck and your straddle. So in that position, I can do exactly the same thing. I can go to the wall, but now instead of keeping the legs straight, I'm going to bend the knees, roll down through the back, push the low back in, which is much easier in a tuck position, upper back, till I kiss the floor lightly. Now that's much easier because it helps me roll by going into a bent knee position, but it also decreases the lever arm, so whatever's sticking out in that direction. And then what you could do is go somewhere in between, so not a tight tuck, not a dead straight position, but just have a slight bend in the knees and even change it through the pathway. You can do the same in the straddle or frog position. So straddle would be seen as dead legs. So straddle would be seen as straight legs out to the side. Frog would be bent knees, but not as much as the tuck, like a hybrid between the straddle and the tuck. But most people would normally train the straddle press and unlock that first before they start the pike press. Next, let's look at 2 exercises for the concentric, so the going up. So number 1, I'm just going to go through the jump. So for the jump, I'm going to try and mimic the press as close as possible, but just use momentum to get my feet off the floor. So normal standard handstand position, but a little bit wider maybe for the press, and then I'm going to bend the knees, drop the hips, jump, pass through the pike to my straight position, and then come back down through an eccentric, a little bit faster, bend the knees at the bottom. So the idea is that we're going to try and get as close to that pike press pathway, but using a little bit of jump to help us. Obviously we could do it this way around and use that safety of having the wall there if we do go over. Now it's very common with the pike jump and pike press that people will overdo it because they send their shoulders and hips too far that way. So overbalance or falling out that direction is very common. Now we can play with that jump and just fine tune the amount of energy or the amount of jump we're using to get up until it gets closer and closer to the real press. Another way to train the concentric, so the going up section, is to use a partial range. The partial range means we're going to use a box or a step or something, and we're only going to work a section of the press. Normally you would start higher and test the movement first. So if I go into the position, video from the side, because that'll give you a lot of information, you can see in this position there's no way my feet will come off the box. But if I start to walk backwards into that 7-like position, I could slide the toes this way as well. So I'm trying to stick my hip up. Now from there, I can lift up to the pike, and then I can come down and back on the box again. Now obviously if you can't get off there, you could play around with raising the height up a little bit more, but I probably wouldn't be going much higher than this because it's limiting the range too much. You really want to be looking at your position from the side and working out why can't you go up. A lot of the time is that you actually be in a faulty position like this and it's impossible to lift, and you need to work out how do you get yourself more like this. Now the legs are light. You could also take the box closer to the wall, so you can use the wall to help you from a balance point of view, or you can actually stick something against the wall, so your butt, your back, and then find the point where you can go up, and you can do repetitions there. Again, trying to lightly touch and open up fully at the top ideally. And then all we do is, as we progress, we decrease the height of the box. So same setup, work out what needs to go in, either the hands or the hips, the feet slide on the box till I find the point where I can go up and then come down with control. Now you can also practice the movement in different positions. So I can lay down on the floor, mimic the handstand position. Now with this one, I want to try and keep my hips as low as possible. I don't want to raise them up at this point. And then I'm trying to fold all the way so my toes touch my hands and then come back with control. What we don't want to do is this. We want to try and squish as much as possible, because that's the same as the press handstand, is we need to compress as much as possible to make it easier to go up and not be sticking out. We can go through the pathway in a forearm stand or a headstand, exactly the same hip movement, but now the shoulders aren't being used in the same way. But it does give you an idea of what it feels like to lift the legs, but it is false in respect to the shoulders. Now a little trick that can work really well if you're super close to the press is if I put something underneath this mat, like that, now I've created an incline, so a slope. Yes, it's a little bit higher at this end, so it's a bit like a partial range, but just that angle of leaning forwards. If you have like a sloped driveway or something like that, you can get into the position here. You'll find you're going to go up much easier, but just be careful because you are going to accelerate forwards a bit more as well. So from there, it's definitely easier to go up. And then obviously you can just decrease the amount of slope or height that you're using. Now if you train the straddle press, the tuck press, or if you've watched any of my press videos, you'll notice that the progressions, the exercises, the drills we use for the presses are all relatively the same. It's just the pathway, the lever arm, and the setup is a little bit different. So test out your press, film from the side, go into the bottom of the press, lean forward, see where your hip crease gets to relative to your hands. So this hip crease needs to be at least level with the palms, ideally a little bit further forwards, and then from there, I should be able to float in that position. If you can't, we'll need to be working that strength, those slow eccentrics with the pause at the bottom, increasing that flexibility range, slowing down the jumps and working those partial range of motion drills until the magic happens and you actually get your pike press. You'll find pike press programs in my app, link is down in the description. Reach out if you need help. Visit my website www.paultwyman.com.au and I'll speak to you in the next one. Thanks guys.